Hi there, this is Miss Niebling back to teach you another smiley face trick. Remember that smiley face tricks are the tools that good writers use in their writing to make their readers smile. Now you've learned 4 smiley face tricks so far. Today you're going to be learning about the 5th smiley face trick. That's called expanded moment. And make sure that you write this next slide in your notes after you write the title down. Now, expanded moment is where you are actually expanding the actions in one moment by doing 3 things. By describing the actions of the character, by describing their personal thoughts and feelings, and by including plenty of description about the setting and about what that character is experiencing. An expanded moment is where you are able to show and not tell how time stands still for that character. You want to give us a moment where everything stops and we can imagine everything along with that character. Expanded moments can be really powerful because good writers know that sometimes we need to slow the reader down. We don't want them to experience so many fast-paced, action-packed moments where they're not able to really absorb what's happening. An expanded moment stops the reader and lets them focus in on the details of what's going on in the story. It's kind of like where they get to zoom in on that moment and look at all the details and that's happening. I kind of look at an expanded moment like using a magnifying glass. By using a magnifying glass and zooming in on one moment of time, you see everything about that moment. Things that you usually would have missed if you had been speeding by without stopping to think and reflect and absorb. In your spirals, I also want you to write down this graphic organizer into your notes because this is how you write an expanded moment. First, you start with an emotion, a feeling word, not a character trait, an emotion. So if you can think of all the emotions that people feel, you start there. Whether it's sadness or loneliness or happiness or excitement or nervousness, anxiety, worry, anything like that. So you have your emotion. Next step is to show us the actions that that character is doing. So what actions does a happy person do? What actions does a sad person do? By describing some of those actions, we're able to imagine what that character is doing. So if they're worried, maybe their brow is furrowed. If they're really scared, maybe they're curled up in a ball in the corner of the couch. By describing those actions, we can see these things happening in our minds. You also want to include thoughts and feelings of what's going on in that moment because we need to be able to feel everything along with that character. It's kind of like you need an opening into their mind. And by choosing to explain their thoughts or feelings to us, we get a glimpse into them and we're able to imagine everything along with them. Finally, you need to include plenty of description, lots of details about their surroundings in that moment that you stopped for the reader. What are they looking at? What are they hearing? Where are they? What's the setting? By using those descriptive details, you're going to be able to really make a moment pop for the reader. So once again, start with an emotion and then include actions, thoughts and feelings, and plenty of description. So in the examples coming up, I want you to choose your favorite example and write it down in your spiral so that you have a great example to look back on for help. So here we go. As I read this, I want you to try and figure out the emotion that this reader was able to help us experience when they used this expanded moment. I hadn't been to the home place since Grandma died. That little house looked so lonely up there with the empty bird feeder and the closed curtains. Grandma had fed the birds sunflower and thistle seeds every morning, and she always kept the curtains tied back in the daytime. My throat felt like it was filled with cotton, and the lonesomeness poured over me like a gully washer rain. It had nothing to do with my treehouse. I was remembering how Grandma liked to hum along to a scratched-up Johnny Cash album. How whenever someone visited her, she'd say, "Look what the cat drug in." How she always smelled sweet, because every morning she dabbed cotillion cologne behind her ears. Now I hope something stood out to you just now. I hope you realize that this author actually used repetition for effect to be able to expand out those thoughts that this character was having. You can do that too. Use other smiley face tricks in your expanded moment. They're helpful that way. So I don't know about you guys, but the emotion that I picked up on by reading this example was sadness. I felt sad along with the character about the loss of her grandmother. Here's another example. It's a little bit different than the first one. But no, I had to go to school. And as I said before, I had to listen to my math teacher preach about numbers and letters and figures. I was tired of hearing her annoying voice lecture about A equals B divided by X. I glared at the small black hands on the clock, silently threatening them to go faster. But they didn't listen, and I caught myself wishing I were on white sand and looking down at almost transparent, pale blue water with Josh at my side. I don't belong in some dumb math class. I belong on the beach, where I can soak my feet in caressing water and let the wind wander its way through my chestnut-colored hair and sip Dr. Pepper all day long. I want to grip a straw all day, not a mechanical pencil that will try unsuccessfully to write the answers to unsolvable questions. Once again, smiley face trick alert. This author also used alliteration to help us be able to connect with what she's describing. So, what emotion is this character talking about in this expanded moment? Boredom. Next. The street was overflowing with couples and families enjoying their last day here on the island. Only none of them was an island. They had each other, holding hands, laughing, pointing things out to one another. Jack had no one, not his mother, who is probably on her way to the Bahamas, not his grandmother, who wanted to steal him away from his mother, not even his one and only friend, Nina, who refused to understand. No one. He was in a bustling, crowded place, and he was entirely alone. Now, once again, you don't have to use other smiley face tricks in your expanded moments, but I hope you see that it actually works really well to be able to use something like repetition for effect. Because when you're repeating something to emphasize a point to your reader, you might be trying to emphasize the same point when you're trying to describe how they're thinking or feeling. So, this author did a fantastic job of showing us what our character was seeing. We got to see different actions taking place. We got to imagine what he was thinking about. And the emotion that he was experiencing, loneliness. Last example. I wandered past the kindergarten classrooms, their windows plastered with artwork. I thought about Mrs. Potts, who had been my kindergarten teacher, and wondered if she was still alive. She'd seemed so old, with her graying hair, long skirts, and tatty moccasins. Every day she'd wear those same moccasins. The little beads had fascinated me. How did they hold on day after day? When would the frayed strings finally give up? How would we ever find all the beads as they bounced and scattered across the black and white squares of the linoleum floor? My life now felt like Mrs. Potts's moccasins. The strings had broken. The beads had scattered. How would I ever put it back together? Now this is interesting because we got to imagine with this character about her kindergarten teacher. We got to look back in time and see that she felt kind of nostalgic about that moment. However, this author also does a great job of showing how sometimes questions that the character is thinking about can really help you with giving thoughts about what that character is thinking. Also, they used a great simile here. Her life felt like Mrs. Potts's moccasins. The strings had broken, the beads had scattered. As a result, we feel that hopeless feeling right along with that character. So now it's your turn. I want you to choose an emotion. If there's an emotion that's not on this list that you'd like to write about, go for it. These are just ideas to get you started. So once you have an emotion, think about a scenario in which a person would feel that emotion. When would a person feel confused or nervous or excited? I want you to write your own moment where time stands still and you include the following information in your sentences. So if you're describing somebody being nervous when they're giving a speech, for example, what actions would they show you so that you can see that they're nervous? What thoughts are they having in their head as they're getting ready to say their speech? And finally, what do they see? What do they hear? What's going on in that moment? Make sure you include plenty of details about that moment. Remember, that expanded moment might be the longest smiley face trick because it needs to be about a paragraph long. It takes time to pause the reader and slow them down. It shouldn't be something quick and over with quickly. So once again, slow yourself down. Give yourself time to write an example that's going to do that emotion justice. Bring your example to class next time, and we're going to go through these together and work on making them even better. Great job today, guys, and thanks for all of your hard work.